Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware. I am James Mosher, your worship associate for this morning, and I welcome you to our worship service. Welcome to those of you who are here in the sanctuary and to you who are joining us online today. Welcome to you who are grounded in faith and to those who are seeking or even wobbly. Welcome to you who are happy, mad, sad, or hurting. Welcome to you who are young or old or in between, like all of us. Welcome to you who are single and alone, and to you who are single and engaged. Welcome to you who are partnered with whomever you love. Welcome to you. If you are new to First U, I invite you to connect to our website, firstuuwilm.org. There you can learn more about our ministry and begin receiving our e-news. We have two announcements this morning, well, two and a half. As you will hear very shortly, this is the beginning of the Ilya season of giving. More about that to come. Also, our Guest at Your Table program continues. It supports the worldwide work of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, UUSC. After the service, please visit the UUSC table in the back in the social hall, where you will meet Doyle, our honey man. And all proceeds from purchase of Doyle's honey will go to the UUSC to support its work. And a reminder to everyone that we will present a concert featuring the Worcester String Quartet this afternoon at 3 p.m. here in the sanctuary. Admission is free, and there will be a reception in the parish hall following the concert. We're grateful to Bob Wynn for sponsoring this concert, and it promises to be a wonderful musical experience, so we hope many of you will be able to join us back here in this place at 3. Now, today, we welcome the Reverend Dr. Chris Antal, who will lead us in worship today. Chris is the staff chaplain at the Corporal Michael J. Crescenz VA Medical Center in Philadelphia. He will be speaking to us on how congregations can be catalysts for healing or exacerbate isolation, and how the response of the community plays a critical role in determining whether veterans become morally injured. For those interested, there will be a conversation time with Reverend Antal following the service today at 12 to 12:45. And now let us prepare our minds and hearts for worship.
Well, it's my first time here, and thank you, James. I do feel welcomed with that welcome. Friday, I was up the road in the little town of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I spent the day at a place called Moravian Seminary. And I wasn't alone. I was there with a group of veterans I've worked closely with. 7 of them served in Iraq. I was there with an Iraqi who's recently become a citizen after leaving the war zone as a refugee. I was there with clergy and spiritual leaders and just members of our larger community who wanted to do something significant, meaningful on the day we call Veterans Day. And our veterans who were in Iraq shared testimony. The community practiced compassionate listening. And I led a liturgy and a ritual that facilitated communal confession and the sharing of responsibility. And then this morning on the way here, I stopped by the display of flags within eyesight of your property. If you stand at your peace pole and walk maybe 100 yards and turn left, there's a display. And I was touched by the outpouring of community support, sponsoring flags. Some were sponsored in the name of a person, someone who died in a war zone, someone who's a veteran, a healthcare worker I saw. But most touching to me was a group of flags sponsored by, well, I won't say because this is not a commercial, but Community Bank. And they were dedicated for all those who struggle in silence. So I tell these stories as we gather together because it seems to me that this is why we gather. We gather to create a place of sanctuary, a space where we can feel safe, to do the work of deep remembering. Not just selective remembering, deep remembering. We do the work of mourning our losses. We do the work of reconnecting to our scriptures and traditions that ground us, to the values that are the stars to guide us through the dark night. We gather to connect and reconnect with one another so that nobody, not here or anywhere, needs struggle in silence. Welcome.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join us by lighting it as I share these words of Rachel Naomi Remen. We are all here to grow in wisdom and learn how to love better. As we each do this in our own ways, we slowly become a blessing to those around us and a light to the world. Now, let us join in singing hymn number 155, Circle Round for Freedom.
Circle round for freedom. Circle round each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole.
Please join me in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
Come on. Get ready to go up here. Over hand, over hand.
Oh, I can't get into Amazon Smile to order a lunchbox for the Ilya holiday giving.
Well, no wonder. We have hooves, not opposable thumbs. Hey, maybe that elf on the shelf can help. They've opposable thumbs.
Hi, Elf. We're trying to order some gifts for the young adults who've aged out of foster care. Can you help us with type on the computer?
I'm happy to help, but why are Santa's reindeer ordering gifts for young adults?
First Unitarian Church has a team called ILYA. It stands for Independent Living for Young Adults.
Ilya holds a holiday giving event every year to give gifts for the young adults who've aged out of foster care.
All of Santa's reindeer like to help First Unitarians out.
This year, we're ordering gifts using Amazon Smile.
People can give a lunchbox, books for children up to 7 years old, money at the Ilya table in Parish Hall, and they can help wrap gifts on December 8th.
That sounds great. I want to help too. I'll tell all the other elves on a shelf about this great holiday giving program. Hey, look, it's an Amazon Smile delivery. Please join in singing the children out to the religious educational groups. The words are on the screen.
I'd like to invite us into a time of meditation, guided, really an invitation to contemplate and to sit with some of the most, I think, perhaps significant language our denomination has come up with around creating peace. This is our statement of conscience from 2010. A few selections. Our faith calls us to create peace, yet we confess we have not done all we could to create peace in ourselves, our congregations, and our society, or to prevent the spread of armed conflict throughout the world. At times, we have lacked the courage to speak and act against violence and injustice. At times, we have lacked the creativity to speak and act in constructive ways. At times, we have condemned the violence of others without acknowledging our own complicity in violence. At times, we have betrayed our rich Unitarian Universalist heritage, a heritage of pacifism and honorable military service and support for service members, veterans, and conscientious objectors. Our faith calls us to hold tensions and embrace paradox within beloved community. Yet we confess we have often failed to hold tensions between those who affirm pacifism, those who view war as sometimes just and necessary, and all those who stand somewhere in between. Too often, we have demonized the veteran, cast out military service members as people incompatible with our Unitarian Universalist principles, and in so doing, we have failed to practice the very compassion, respect, hospitality that is at the core of those principles we hold most dear. Sorry but not discouraged, humbled by our past failings, we stand together in our affirmation that all people share a moral responsibility to create peace. Let the bell sound call us into a minute of silent reflection, and the bell sound will call us out into a time of prayer for the people. This is the time for prayers of the people. You are, we are the people here and joining us virtually. We come with our joys, we come with our concerns, we come with our celebrations, we come with our laments, we come with our hopes and dreams, we come with our heartbreak. I invite you, as you feel so moved, to give voice to your prayer here in this community this morning. We hold, we tend all the prayers, both spoken and those that remain unspoken in the quiet places of our heart in this beloved community. Well, I'm going to begin with a disclaimer and then an acknowledgement. The disclaimer is that I come to you as Reverend Antal this morning, not Chaplain Antal, the federal employee. So anything I say from this point forward is my personal expression of opinion and conscience, and in no way representative of the Department of Veterans Affairs or the United States government. I needed to do that because I like my job and I'd like to go back to it on Monday. The acknowledgement is to my esteemed colleague, Reverend Dr. Larry Piers, who I first encountered when I was a student. I'd gone back to seminary after coming out of Afghanistan, coming out of the Army, confused, in moral pain, searching for direction. And Dr. Piers, Professor Piers, in that context, appeared in a classroom at Hartford Seminary and gave me language to understand what I was wrestling with, and opened up a pathway that has become the essence of my community ministry today. So I appreciate Professor Piers, who taught me about adaptive work. And it relates very much to our topic this morning: moral pain, moral injury, veterans. And if there's one thing I want to communicate today, I'm going to say it now because I might forget later. And that is this injury, this moral injury that we're exploring, is not a disorder. It's not a veteran's problem that invites a technical solution by a clinician, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist, or even a chaplain in a hospital. No, not at all. What we're talking about this morning, the injury, is to the community. It's a breakdown in relationships. It's an adaptive challenge. And it requires us, invites us, to do adaptive work. Moral injury is a public health crisis, best addressed by a communal intervention. Communities like this have the potential, if you are able to build the capacity to do the work. Now I'd like to get to know you better, because I don't know you so well. I know Dr. Piers. I'm a veteran suffering moral pain. I'm working through it, but I'm wondering if I'm the only one here this morning. And if there's another veteran in our sanctuary today who's also suffering moral pain, if you're willing, I'd invite you to stand with me. Let's hold this time in silence. There's no place for applause here, but look around. Get to know your community, our community. Please remain standing if you would. I would like to invite other veterans who are here. Maybe not all veterans are suffering moral pain. There may be other veterans who don't identify with that, or maybe you're wondering, you don't know quite what I'm talking about. But are there other veterans here who would like to be acknowledged this morning, if you would be willing to stand? And in our culture, please stay standing. We're not done yet. We're just getting started. And I apologize if, this is assuming some able-bodiedness in the congregation. So if anybody is unable to stand, you can raise an arm if that's possible, and participate in other ways. So veterans aren't the only ones who carry the weight of military service in our culture. There are family members, spouses, children, parents. If you are a spouse or former spouse, a child or a parent of a veteran or somebody who's actively serving in the military, I invite you to stand also. The rest who are sitting, I just ask you to reflect on your relationships, your larger network of people in your lives, neighbors, people you grew up with, friends, former friends. If your life has been touched by the loss of perhaps a veteran to suicide, or perhaps not a family member, but a coworker, a colleague. If you have in that larger network someone that's coming to mind now who's perhaps in the military or out of the military, maybe suffering in silence, I invite you to also stand. Okay. Let's just sit with this moment for a minute, and I invite those of you who are seated, and this is going to be a gentle confrontation. We've been a country at war for 2 decades. Yet, you can't bring to mind a single person who's been in these wars. You don't have a personal relationship with anyone who's carried the weight. What does that mean? You can all be seated, please, just relax. You feel the temperature going up a little bit. Well, to do adaptive work, we have to raise the temperature a little, but not so much that people get burned. So it's a balance. But let's stay together through this, because I'm going to make it a little bit hotter now. And, I want this all to be invitational. I believe in informed consent, but I'm going to invite you into an exercise where we can learn a little bit more about maybe ourselves and the community here. And all this exercise invites you to do, if you choose to participate. And you can communicate to me and to everyone that you're just going to observe this exercise by sitting where you are and folding your arms like this. But let me tell you what the exercise is before you make a decision. I'm just going to read a series of statements and ask you where you stand. And if you agree with the statement, I'm going to invite you to stand up. If you disagree, I'm going to invite you to remain seated. If you're not participating in this whole process, you can just cross your arms now. If I read a statement and you decide, I don't even want to participate in responding to that statement, you can just sit and cross your arms at any time in this process. Is that clear? If you're home, joining us online, 2 thumbs up is agree, 2 thumbs down is disagree. No clue. Not participating. That gives you 4 options. You follow? Okay. Okay, let's start here. Oh, and if you're unable to stand, you can raise your hand if you agree. So let's do this. Number 1, I'll read each one twice. I would never intentionally kill another person under any circumstance. I would never intentionally kill another person under any circumstance. If you agree, please stand. If you disagree, remain seated. That's an agreement, not a question, right? Okay. So you're agreeing. So hold on, let's just make sure we're clear here. If you're agreeing with that, if you're seated, you're saying, if you're seated and your arms aren't crossed, you're saying, there are some circumstances where I would be willing to intentionally kill another person. Are we clear? Is that what you're communicating? Okay, so just as we go through this, I want you to pay attention to two things. One is what's coming up inside of you, feelings, but also look around the room. And where do you stand in relationship to the people in this space? And how does that feel? Okay, next one. Number 2. You can sit down. Sometimes killing another person can be an act of love. Sometimes killing another person can be an act of love. If you agree, please stand. Look around. Okay, sit down. Keep breathing, take a breath. Number 3, I can name one just war. I can name one just war. If you agree, please stand. This one gets me into trouble with the clergy. Number 4, God is the biggest killer in the Bible. God is the biggest killer in the Bible. If you agree, please stand. God is the biggest killer in the Bible. It means God has killed the most people, according to the biblical record. Okay, you can sit down. Number 5, sometimes God uses the military to carry out God's will on earth. Groaning is not an option. That's not an. But pay attention to the emotion behind the groan. What's coming up when I say that? Agree. Oh, by the way, I should say this. There's no response here that's right or wrong, and there's no response here that's going to get you excommunicated from Unitarian Universalism. What will happen to you in this congregation, I have no control over that. Does anybody agree? Sometimes God uses the military to carry out God's will on earth. Brave. You all need to talk to this person over coffee. Crucial conversations. Number 6, the United States should not have a military at all. The United States should not have a military at all. Stand if you agree. Look around. You all need to talk to each other, okay? Number 7, every capable adult U.S. citizen should be required to do some military service. Every capable adult U.S. citizen should be required to do some military service. Stand if you agree. Just want to point out the hypocrisy. A lot of you believe there needs to be a military, but you're not willing to be part of it. Okay? Number 8, I share some responsibility for the killing done by the U.S. military. I share some responsibility for the killing done by the U.S. military. Look around, look at all the people standing. Now, this is not on my list, but stay standing and raise your hand if you can name one person right now who's been killed by the U.S. military in the last 20 years. Raise your hand if you can name one person who's been killed, either a service member or somebody who's been killed in another country. Raise your hand if you can name the name of that person. There's a few hands that have gone up. Only a few. Okay. Can be seated. Okay, this is so pay attention a little bit longer. In warfare, authorized by legitimate authority, one person is not the killer, but the group is. In warfare, authorized by legitimate authority, one person is not the killer, but the group is. Stand if you agree. Okay, you can sit down. Just a couple more, we're getting there. I belong to the group that kills. I belong to the group that kills. Sit down. And the last one. People can belong to the group that kills and still be good people. People can belong to the group that kills and still be good people. Okay. We could just stop here if we need to. Should we keep going? I don't know how long this congregation is used to sitting through a minister's remarks. I may have already reached my time limit. If you agree that the minister should keep talking, please stand. Thank you. I'm going to share a bit of my story as a veteran who suffers moral pain. Oh, 10 years ago, from a pulpit in Kandahar airfield in Afghanistan, I invited the people of the United States to confess in a Sunday morning sermon called A Veterans Day Confession for America. It was received well from the small gathering of service members and contractors who had come to worship in my tradition. Many of them were experiencing moral pain, and the confession was an invitation to welcome those who suffer moral pain. My sermon was grounded in our Creating Peace statement of conscience that includes confessional. You heard it this morning. At my request, colleagues back in Boston shared the sermon on the Church of the Larger Fellowship website, which has a broad reach to service members in our denomination who are deployed throughout the world, and my colleagues had been following my posts, so I shared it for them as well. Senior Army officers, however, discovered it and reacted harshly. Lieutenant George McHugh wrote to me personally. He found it to be very unprofessional, distasteful, and insulting to everyone who's ever worn the uniform of the United States service member. He advised me to reconsider my profession both as an officer and a chaplain. Colonel Dreisbeck, the commander of the battalion I was assigned to, summoned me to his office, showed me the sermon on his computer screen, asked me if I had written it, and said, "You made us look like the bad guys. Your message doesn't support the mission." He appointed an investigating officer to draw up charges against me. I obtained a trial defense lawyer, Major Sean Park, and after an ordeal that spanned 3 months in the midst of combat operations in Afghanistan, I was handed a general officer memorandum of reprimand signed by Scotty D. Carpenter for politically inflammatory speech and bringing dishonor upon myself, my unit, and the entire U.S. Army. I appealed with dozens of letters of support, including from authorities like Dr. Edward Tick, Chaplain Colonel Herman Kaiser, may he rest in peace, and the Harvard-trained theologian, Dr. Paul Razor, who wrote a letter that I cherish, and I'll quote from it now. In his letter to General Carpenter, he says, "I can affirm that Chaplain Antal's public prayer violates no tenet of the Unitarian Universalist faith. In both its content and its tone, the confession speaks both to and from the heart of Unitarian Universalism. Moreover, in my judgment, the confession does not bring dishonor to the United States military. It constitutes a careful and sensitive expression of concern by a chaplain toward those in his spiritual care." Thanks to their letters, the reprimand was filed locally, an action intended to protect me from bad paper that would ruin my military career. Even so, Colonel Dreisbeck handed me a do not promote evaluation and released me from active duty. I was redeployed to the United States for retraining. Before I left Afghanistan, I visited one of the senior chaplains on base, then Major Tyson Wood, a Roman Catholic priest at the post chapel. I showed him my sermon, told him what happened, and asked his impression. He paused, looked at me intensely, and said, "You know what your problem is? You were too honest." "10 years have passed, yet there's still much about this episode that troubles me. I can accept honesty is not an Army value. At least it's not one of the 7 Army values that spell the acronym leadership. H stands for honor, not honesty, and the L for loyalty is often in tension with honest truth-telling. No doubt, many who choose loyalty over truth find pseudo-moral justifications for doing so. As Aeschylus wrote, God is not averse to deceit in a just cause. Similar sentiments are expressed with the adage, truth is the first casualty of war. Craig Whitlock revealed this in his reporting on the Afghanistan papers, showing all of us the systemic deception in the highest military and civilian leadership that led to our longest war. Some veterans in the war zone or outside the war zone are able to be honest. I think of Joe Darby and Justin Watt, whistleblowers who spoke with moral courage to expose Abu Ghraib or the atrocity of Mahmadiyah that led to the death of Abir al-Kamza, a 14-year-old Iraqi girl who was raped and then burned. Some veterans reclaim honesty by confiding in chaplains like me. Most, however, stuck in a culture of concealment, try to suck it up, pack their moral pain away in a hurt locker, often with devastating consequences. In VA, there's a growing recognition of moral injury and how it contributes to the epidemic of veteran suicide. According to a recently released VA study, veteran suicide is down to 17 a day. This is not cause for celebration, as official reports of a decrease in veteran suicide may be misleading, if only for the fact that the entire veteran population has declined by almost 5 million in the last decade. Other studies from non-governmental sources suggest the actual number of suicides may be double. My experience has taught me that many veterans have stories to tell and yearn to speak honestly to an audience of compassionate citizens who are ready and willing to listen deeply, reflect, and accept responsibility. Yet where can they be found? Are you ready to listen? Abraham Lincoln had the right idea in 1861 when he declared a day of national humiliation, prayer, and fasting. Holidays like Memorial Day and Veterans Day could be a time where we close our businesses, open our civic centers, our public spaces, our sanctuaries for collective remembering, mourning, shriving, as Edward Tick recommends in his book, War and the Soul. This is what we did on Friday at Moravian Seminary. In his 2012 letter to General Carpenter, in my defense, to support my appeal, the Vietnam veteran, Larry Shook, wrote these words: "The terror of facing the enemy is nothing compared to carrying the knowledge that you have helped cause innocent suffering brought about by a nation unwilling to look itself in the mirror." As I see it, he wrote, the solution to this crisis of the national soul and the private soul crisis faced by every veteran like me is precisely what Reverend Antal expressed in his sermon, confession. Such moral reckoning is adaptive work. And I offer our collective moral responsibility. especially now, in a moment where many of us seem quick to forget the past 20-plus years of warfare that resulted in tremendous costs, financial, environmental, lives in the millions. We're ready to write it off, it seems, and focus our attention on bad guys out there like Vladimir Putin, who can be the target of our righteous indignation so that we can avoid the work of introspection, attending to our own hypocrisy, hubris, and self-deception. Consider the recent gaffe by George W. Bush speaking to a public audience in Texas this spring. I quote, "The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of Iraq." He said that. Then he corrected himself. I mean Ukraine. Yes, he laughed, like you laughed. And his audience laughed. What is behind that laughter? He chuckled and muttered, "Iraq too," under his breath, while the audience erupted in laughter, just like we laughed just now. Lamentation, shriving, confession would have been the morally appropriate response to this, however accidental, honesty. But laughter, in the face of atrocity and unspeakable devastation, looks a lot like sociopathy, or even evil, the kind which M. Scott Peck described in his book, People of the Lie. The evil, he said, that arises in the refusal to acknowledge our own sins. The cost of valuing honor and loyalty above all risks concealing painful truths, further exacerbating the isolation of veterans, anguished by resentment, disgust, guilt, and shame. At the same time, undermining the capacity of elected leaders and we the people to make informed choices about our use of military resources. If only when Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld admitted that he had, quote unquote, no visibility as to the bad guys are, more than 5 years post 9/11, if only in that moment he had paused to look himself in the mirror, he might have caught a glimpse of the badness that lurks in every human heart. And I might never have been deployed to Afghanistan. The work I do now, the Moral Injury Group in Philadelphia, and the Community Healing Ceremony, which is an integral component of that work, empowers veterans to rebuild lost moral identity by reclaiming honesty and taking responsibility to share truth with citizens, with we the people, who have ultimate authority over the military in which we served. The authorization for the use of military force results in harmful consequences, not only for veterans and families and communities, but for countless people beyond our border. Yet these consequences too often remain concealed. The public healing ceremony provides a context for veterans to reveal uncomfortable truths and harmful consequences within a community of compassionate citizens who are ready and willing to listen and accept responsibility. This process allows veterans to relieve themselves of moral pain and redistribute it more equitably so that we can all assume our fair share of moral responsibility. My friends, this is sacred work for me and for our veterans. And this morning, you have invited me into your sanctuary, and I have come with my moral pain, and I have shared some of that with you this morning. And I thank you for welcoming me, and I hope you continue to do this vital work.
You'll join me in singing hymn number 159, This Is My Song. This is my song, O God of all the nations. That's the first thing, okay. Let him my voice, my holy shrine. This is my song, O God of all the nations. A song of peace for lands afar and wide. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Reverend Chris, thank you for your hard words spoken in love. Well, get ready for whiplash. This is the offertory. Our November Soul Matters theme is change. I was sitting in one of those little classroom chairs in Sunday school. It fit me just fine back then, you know, those little chairs, because I was only 5. I had my little cardboard offering box on the table in front of me. I'd been dropping coins in it for weeks. And now it was time for the mission offering. The teacher had just finished her prayer and passed the little basket to the child next to me. Then it was my turn. The basket was passed to me, and I put my little box with coins in it, and I passed the basket on to the next kid who forgot his. Fast forward a decade. I was in youth group by then, and we met in a grown-up kids' room with regular person folding chairs. It was time for the offering again, only this time I didn't have a box, and I had not been saving up. I was a teenager, you see. This time the collection was not in a basket, rather it was in a medium-sized wood bowl with a little red velvet covering on the bottom. I dug into my pocket, I found 35 cents, which was worth more than 35 cents then, and dropped it into the bowl, and it didn't even make a sound because of the velvet in the bottom. Several more decades later, a middle-aged man sitting with his wife and 4 teenagers in the sanctuary of our church, I was once again passed an offering receptacle. This time, one of my kids passed it to me, and the offering receptacle was a lovely, big, brass offering plate with the same red velvet cushion in the bottom. This time, my offering didn't make any sound either because I put paper money in it. I was middle-aged. Then I passed the plate on to another one of my kids who flipped a quarter in it and it hit the side and made an embarrassing clank for all to hear. Well, even more decades later, all of our kids had grown and left home. Just wife and I sat in the pew now. When the offering plate came this time, I didn't put any money in it at all. Instead, I dropped an envelope into it, and inside the envelope was a paper check to pay for my pledge. No sound. I'm either. Just a couple of years ago, I sat out there where you are, and an usher held a lovely red velvet bag toward me to receive the offering, and I put my monthly check in it. Still silence. Well, at last, here we are in 2022 at First U. We don't use baskets or wooden bowls or brass plates or even our velvet offering bags anymore. We don't even take up an offering anymore. How have things changed? Since COVID, we rely on our members and friends to actually take initiative to support the church. And in a moment, we will show you 4 ways by which you can do so. But think of the dedication and discipline required now to make your gift. No usher standing over you like a monitor or an assessor. No neighbors watching to see if you gave or not. And not even a guilty conscience leaving the building without dropping any money. Indeed, how things have changed. Now giving is easy and convenient, and now you really must be intentional about your offering. What has not changed is the need of First U for your financial support. So here come the 4 ways you can give. Oh, and please, no loose change. Please join me in dedicating our offering to the work of the congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. We dedicate our lives and these our offerings.
city of joy, city of sorrow, city of promise, city of pain. Such is life. Such is being. Such is spirit. Such is love. World of joy. World of sorrow. World of promise. World of pain. Such is life. Such is being. Such is spirit. Such is love.
If you have a chalice at home, we invite you to join us by extinguishing it as I share this paraphrase of Rachel Naomi Remen. Here today, in this sacred place, we have grown in wisdom and learned how to love a little bit better. As we go forth, each on our own paths, we become a blessing to those around us and a light to the world.
I invite you to stand and respond with these words. All this joy, all this sorrow, all this promise, all this pain, such is life, such is being, such is spirit, such is love. Friends, there's much pain in our hearts, in the world, but the work of tending moral pain is uniquely ours to do as a moral community that aspires to covenant and promote principles and purposes. I invite you to continue this work of tending moral pain with me at our next community healing ceremony, December 8th at 4 p.m. at the Philadelphia VA Medical Center. You're invited to come to our ceremony in person or join virtually, and I'll make sure that the invitation goes out in your newsletter. Beyond that, my hope is that you continue to create sanctuary here that is safe, a place to remember deeply, to mourn, to lament, but also to find hope through reconnecting to our tradition, to the highest values we inspire to embody, and perhaps most importantly, to ourselves and to one another.
Our closing hymn is number 121, We'll Build a Land.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken